Okay, good evening. We're up to Kuf Beis Amid Beis. Kuf Beis Amid Beis, about 9-10 lines up. Boy, mi name Rav Yanai. So we're dealing with the parsha of a person renting, leasing. Okay, so usually they would lease, let's say, at least for a year, and schiris is usually paid at the end of the year. If again, with a shana, you paid at the end of the year. If you were rented monthly by the month, then you paid monthly. So here we're talking about a case where you leased it for the year. So Seicherama Basati. The Seicher says, I gave the money. I never took it. Almila Raya. Who has to bring a raya? Now the Gemara wants a little more information. Emas, exactly when is this conversation taking place? If it's within the year, Tanina, we learned, as we'll see in a second. And if it's after this man, Tanina, we also learned. And where are we going to go ahead and find the parallel to the schiris for year? We're going to find it by Pidyon Aben. Pidyon Aben mitoich shloishim parallels schiris during the year. Pidyon Aben after shloishim parallels schiris after the year. That not Mesa ab b'toich shloishim yoim. If the father died within 30 days, b'cheska shloi nifta. It's a chazaka that the child has not been redeemed. At sheyavi raya shenifta till he brings a raya that he is redeemed. He'd have to bring a raya. After Shloshim Yoim, if the father died after 30 days, we have a chazaka that he was redeemed. Until they say, David, neighbors, they say Shloi Nifta. So l'chayra, what's your shaila? If the guy tainas, I paid the schiris mitoch the year, he's not believed. If he says after the year, then he's believed. So l'chayra, what's the shaila? Says Gemara, no, this is a little. There is a shaila. Like tzricha. It's on the last day, it's 300 in the solar year, it's 365. That day he makes the claim. The day where what? The Chiyuv comes. Me of it inish the para b'yuma the mashlam zmane. Is it the way of a person to pay the day where as they say in the vaca, comes time to pay the piper? You're going to go ahead and pay at that time. I lie, or no, you wait out the day. So that's the shaila. On the day of the year being over, and he's claiming that he paid, who's believed? Who has to bring a raya? The seicher saying he paid, or the masker who said that he never got it. So Amalu Rabbi Yochanan, Kinisua, you learned the answer to this as well. You learned the answer to this as well, right? That if you believe. Sacha bismanoi, the sacha on the day where he finishes his malacha, and he says that he didn't get paid yet, and the balabayas says that he paid him. Again, so we have the parallel. It's he finished his job and he claimed that he didn't get paid. Nishba, he swears v'noitel, and he takes. Now, what's the parallel to us? Sacha who did Ramu Rabbanan Shvua Allah. It's Dafka, the worker that the Torah placed the Shvua on. Mishum de Balabayas Torah b'Payalav. Normally, a person is not believed to have paid up. Normally, a person is believed to have paid up after the Zman or on the day of the Zman. The reason over here he's not believed the Balabas is because he's so torrid. He's very, very busy. So therefore, since he's so busy, we're going to say the Seicher swears that he never went ahead and received anything, and now he gets it. Aval hacha, but in the suffix of the Gemara, between the Seicher and the Masker, where you do not have the svara of the Balabas being torrid, paying off all his workers or whatever at the beginning, right? Therefore, the Masker does not have to swear. Ela Seicher mehimna. The Seicha is believed to say he paid up, right? The Seicha is believed to say he paid up, even that day, ubishvua, provided it's a shvua, he makes a shvua heses. So to be paished shaila, right? Over there, the one who's making the claim that he never got paid is believed because the svar of the balabas. Over here, we believe that when he says he never got the money, we don't believe him. We believe the Seicher. Provided he says a shvua heses, a shvua derabanan. So therefore, we can be paished that shaila. Amarav Nachman, Haiman the oigule beisel lechave leesa shonen A person who rents a house out to his friends for 10 years, the Kosav Le Shtara, he wrote a shtar that he rented it out for 10 years, and he gives the shtar into the hands of the renter, but he doesn't write the day that it began. It doesn't write the day that the 10 years began, and nor the time when it's going to be complete. Amalei the Seicher, and the master says to the Seicher, Nikitas Chamesh Shanim, you already lived in my house for 5 years. And the Seicher says, no, I only lived there 3 years. So Mehimna, the Balabayas, is believed that he lived there for 5 years, right? Because why? Because Karka is in the Chazaka of the Bailoi Medes. And therefore, any suffix, we're going to go ahead and keep it by him. So again, the rental policy was for 10. We have a shtar saying was for 10, but we don't have the time it started. Says the master it started 5 years ago. Says the Seicher only started 3 years ago. We don't know who to believe. Of course, the chazaka that he has holding on to the land, we're going to leave the master. If someone lends 100 zuz to his friend, I paid you half. You're going to believe him? So Amalei, Ravina said, Hachi Hashta, how can you compare the two? Hassan, by the case of Alva, Shtar Lugavinakoi. The purpose of the shtar is to collect. It's not as a right. No, it's the purpose is to collect. Therefore, in Isa de Pare, if you did pay up, he should have gone ahead right and written on the shtar that it was paid. Inami Michtav Tavro, or written a shaver. In other words, you're not going to leave a shtar halva, right? We're not going to go ahead and write a shtar halva and pay up and let the guy keep it. Doesn't make any sense. Even if it's half the price, there has to be some raya. Mashenkin over here, the shtar is just a proof that the skiris took place. It's not gavaina. You're not collecting with this at all. Aval by the skiris of the house, where the purpose of the shtar for 10 years is just to say that there was a lease in the first place. Amalei, the masker to the seicha, the reason I wrote a shtar, that you shouldn't stay there for 3 years and squat there and claim that I sold it to you. Remember, we're going to see Masech the Baba Basra in the third parak, right? The Cheskes Abatim, that a person's on a field for 3 years, no one makes a claim. He says, and he says, I bought it. He's believed because he doesn't have to watch a shtar longer. So over here, the reason the shtar was written that you should not come to that point. So you can't go ahead and compare halva to a shtar, to a skiris. Amrav Nachman, shoyel odem betuva la'olam. This is a very interesting lashon. A person can lend, it can borrow forever. Tuva means as long as it's good. As long as this object, the tool that I'm borrowing, or whatever the object is, I'm using tool as an example, the lashon of tuva means that what, as long as it's good, you can borrow it, and you can come back and borrow it again, and come back and borrow it again, and come back and borrow it again, provided, as we're going to see, you made a kinyan sudar. In other words, if you make a kinyan mashicha, as soon as you return it, that kinyan mashicha is over. But if you make a kinyan sudar on the whole deal, the fact that he let you use it completely, then you'll be able to do that. So Amal Rav Mori Bara de Bashmuel V'had de Konim Yadi. That's provided you made a kinyan sudar, so you'll be able to go ahead and reuse this constantly. Rav Mori Braid Rav Ashi Mahad Lekate. At the time where no longer is it in good shape, you'd have to return the broken handle, whatever it happened to be. Amar Rava Hayman the Amalei Lechavre Oishlan Mara. Lend me a mara. We touch a mara, a hoe. It's not a little shovel. Lemirpak Bay, to go ahead and hoe. Hai Pradisa, this particular orchard. Rafik Beyahu Pradisa, all he can use it for is that particular orchard. However, if he goes ahead and borrows it and he says Pardisa, but he doesn't say this Pardis, he says, lend me your hoe for a Pardis, Rafik Bay called Pardisa the boy. He can use it for what? Any one of his groves. Pardisei, when he does Lashon Rabim, Rafik Vazal called Pardisei this. Like then, in other words, so if he says this specific one, only this specific one. If he says the Lashon Pardis singular, he can only use it for a Pardis, not necessarily any particular one. If he says Pardisei is the Lashon Rabim, then he can go ahead and use this hoe for all of his Pardisim. And he will turn it if it breaks. Amra Papa Haiman Damle Lechavre. Oishlan Hai Gargusa. He said, lend me this. Rashi says Gargusa is a ber mayim chayim. It's a well. So he borrows a well and what? V'nafla. He says, Hai Gargusa means this particular well. V'nafla and the walls of the well fell in and now it's unusable. Leibanila, the shoyel is not able to go ahead and build it. Why? Because he said this particular one. Gergusa, he said, just stam the word Gergusa, v'nafla, then bana, you can build it. Be Gergusa, and Rashi says the kavana is to dig and find a new well, then kari v'azal kamer Gergusa ba'are. He can continue to go ahead and dig until he finds a well, adam esramile, till he gets one. However, since he's not giving a particular well, fellas, he's giving him a right, so he has to make a kinyan. Where you give an object, giving over the object is the kinyan. If you give a right, then you need something more significant, in this case, a kinyan suda. Says the Mishnah. Someone goes to Hedwad and leases a house to his friend, the nafal, and the house falls in. Chayiv, the master, the one who lent it, is chayiv lahamad loy bias. He has to go ahead and produce another house. Hayad cotton, if the house was a small house, right? Lo yasenu godly, can't make a big house. Rashi says the guy likes a small, cozy house. He doesn't want a big house. Gadol, it was a larger house. Like yasenu cotton, he has to replace whatever was there. Echad, if it was a two-room house, lo yasenu l'shnayim, not two. If it was a one-room house, don't make it into a two-room house. Shnayim lo yasenu achad. If it was a two-room house, don't make it to one. Lo yifsak min achaloinos, no matter the number of windows was, you have to go ahead and provide the same number of windows. Lo yosef aleim, nor do you have to give more windows. Elam midash shneim, only if they both agree. Okay, so Gemara wants to know exactly what's the case of it. Hey, dummy, you're telling me that if it's a big house, if it's a small house, what's going on over here? Either Amalei Bayis said, Nafal, Azalei. If he said he rented him this particular house, so what happens if it falls in? Then Azalei, all I rented you was this house. If this house is no longer here, that's it. So who? If this house is no longer here, it's finished. Either Amalei Bayis Stam, and if he rented him a house, a Stam Echad, Amai Lo Yasenu Shnayim. Why can't he make it two? Cotton, am I lo yasenu gadol? In other words, if I rented you this particular house, I don't have to prove anything. If I rented you a house, then why am I limited to making it small, big, big, small, 1, 2, 2, 1? Just go ahead and whatever he makes because he rented him a house. So Meshlakish Damalei Bayashani Maskolacha Midas Orkoi Kach v'Kach. In other words, he gave the specs. He gave the specs, the dimensions of the house. The house that I rented to you, this is its length, and this is its width, and this is what it's got to be. So what's the chiddush? If that's the house, then he has to provide that exact house. So Ella, Kiyasarov and Amaresh Lakish, the Amalei bias kizeh ani maskalacha. A bias like this I rented to you. Okay, Yakati my lemember. So what's the chiddush? So you have to provide a house kizeh. So that's tzricha de aguda de nahara. The house is by a riverfront. It's by the river. It's in Malibu. It's in Chves, in Lawrence, in back Lawrence. There's a little water over there. So Ma'adatema, my kizeh, the koy agudid in Ahara, kemash malon. Now I learned that I would think he has to provide him a house by the water. Kemash malon, he just has to provide the same house, but not necessarily by the water. Albeit Rashi does not learn that way. Kamash Malon, Rashi says that Kula Milsa Isni. He made it on everything. This house, the size of the house, and even the waterfront would be part of the deal. Baruch Hashem, the Rifa, I was Machab, and the Rifa says, like I said, so it's really a machloikis whether it has to be in the waterfront or not. I don't know why Rashi said this. What forced Rashi to say that? Anyway, Hadrulach HaShayel, okay, Avrami Weinreb is joining us on the way to Toronto. No, he's not even in Toronto. He's home. He's not in the car. He's not even eating. So we're the beginning of a new parak, Kuf Gimel Amid Aleph, a new parak. Okay, so we spoke out the other day the different types of sharecroppers. I'll give you 3. A kablin, also known as an oris, which you work the field, and whatever the crops provide, you give a percentage to the owner. Usually, the percentage of the owner is more than the percentage of the sharecropper. What we Taisus on the other base says there are situations where if the sharecropper provides the seed, as we spoke out, then the sharecropper will get the large percentage. There is then the chakiros. Chakiros, guys, is when you said, I'm going to give you X amount. We spoke out the other day, like you have a chayiv. Whether the field gives this or doesn't give it, you have to pay up. So I'm on your field, I'm working your field. If the amount that I promised you, I get from the field, great. If not, I have to get another field or for my own pocket. That's called chakiros. If you say, I'm going to go ahead and pay you money, that's called schiros. Okay, so in Stam Kablonis, when we say Hamakabel Sada Mechavera, look at Rashi, Hamakabel, Oy Ba'arisus, which would be Lemechza, a half of the profits, L'shlish, a third of the profits, Ulravia, a quarter, Oy Bechakirus, Bekach Vekach Kurim Mishana, for X amount of Kurim for the year. So Rashi spells out succinctly what I just spoke out, the Arichas. Rashi says exactly what it is, right? The difference between Arisus and Chakiris. So when the Mishnah says Hamakabel Sadame Chaveroi, it's speaking either one. Makom Shenoiga Liktzer, in the place they were noig to harvest using a tool, a sickle. Yiktzar, you use a sickle. Lakar, to uproot it, usually using your hands. Yakar, you uproot it. What's the difference? If you use a sickle, you're going to have stuff remaining because you're not getting to the root of the matter. If, however, you go ahead and uproot it, then you're going to take out the whole thing. So depending on the minig, whatever the minig is, that's what you got to do. Hakol lachroish achrav. After they would finish harvesting, there was a minig to go ahead and plow the field afterwards to go ahead and remove all the old weeds that they shouldn't regenerate, right? Then yachroish, then that's what you do. Hakol k'minig Medina. Everything goes according to minig Medina. In other words, whatever is the minig, the makabel cannot change, or the balabas can't change. So as we're going to see in the Gemara, if it's a place that noyik la'akar, and the balabas says, I want you to use a sickle because I want leftover tevin in my field, the seicha can say, the kabbalah can say, no, that's not the minig, right? It's not the minig. In other words, each one could stop the other one. If the kabbalah wants to go ahead and cut, and the minig is la'akar, then the balabas could say, I want a clean field. I don't want to go ahead and have stubble in the field. So either way, they can play one or the other, but call k'minig Medina, whatever it is. Shem shecholkim b'tfua, just like they divide by tfua, kacholkim b'teven u'b'kash. Okay, what's teven and kash? So let's see Taisvis. Hamakabel b'teven u'b'kash. Oisei sheniktzas im hashiboiles current teven. The part that is harvested with the piles, with the sheaves, is called teven. Ba'nisha ba'aretz, and that remains in the ground, kori kash. Shekorin, it's in Old French called istubla, or the word stubble. You can see the word stubble there, guys. In the Tais, you see the word stubble, very geschmack. So kash is what remains, and the teven is what you cut, okay? But each one, we call it straw, right? But there's a straw that is cut, and there's a straw that's in the ground. There's a difference. If they'll divide that equally, and just like ukashem shecholkim b'yayin, just like they go ahead and divide the anavim, the wine, kacholkim amibeis biz muros in the shoots, ubekanim and the reeds, ushneim esapkin esakonim. What are the reeds doing there? Rashi says to keep the vines supported, and just like they divide it, so too they provide it. The Gemara is going to say in the end, the reason why they divided is because initially they provided it. Since they both provided it, they're getting back that they invested, each one of them. Okay, says the Gemara. Tana, Malcolm Shnog Liktzar, the place that they're going to cut the tefua, ain't a Rishoi Lakar, you can't go ahead and uproot the whole thing. Lakar, to uproot the whole thing, ain't a Rishoi Liktzar. Ushneim, the Balikarka and the Oris, or the Chayker, Ma'akvin Zeazeh, the Brisa says, they could go ahead and they can stop each other and say you have to keep the minig. Now, what does it mean, Liktzar? Ein Rishoi Lakar. What does that mean? Hi Amar The Balkarka says, but the Tisvin, I need the Tevin. Li Ba'aroi. I want the Tevin to be in the ground. In other words, even though the minig is Lakar, I want the Tevin to be in the ground. And he can go ahead and say, well, the minig is Lakar, I'll be Iker. Bahai, the Poil can say, Omar, Loy Matsinu Lakar. I don't want to be, right? Or in a place that they're noig to go, Loy Matsinu, I don't want Lakar because it's tremendous tircha. So each one could stop the other one. If it's a place that what, if it's a place that what that is that you're kaitzer, you could be kaitzer, and the guy can't tie. I want the tevin on my ground, and the other guy can't say I don't want to be oiker because it's too hard. If it's the minute to be oiker, you have to be oiker. In other words, the Gemara is giving you the two stadim, the tzad of the balabas and the tzad of the worker. The tzad of the balabas is what I want the tevin in the ground. The tzad of the worker is I don't want to be oiker. But if it's the minute to be oiker, that's the deal. Okay, the other way, it's a place that's annoyed lakar, and he doesn't have a shus to be kaitzer. Hi Omar Bina din Snakri Ara. The owner says, listen, I want my field clean, I want to be oiker. The Poil says, Bina Tivna, I want the tevin to be there. Either one can't stop. Ushnei Makman says, that's redundant. Lamali, why do you have to say that? It says, no, Matam Kamar. It's giving the reason. Matam Liktsarein Roshay Lakar. If it's a place that they harvest with a sickle, you can't be oiker. Lakar in Roshay Liktsar. Mishum the Shnei Makman says that because they both have the ability to ma'akev. Each one can make a cheshbon. What's better for them? We go after the minig. Okay, we said that if the minig is lachrish achrov, then you have to do it. Says the Gemara Yachrash, you just told me I called minig amadina. So if the minig is after you harvest to go ahead and plow to ensure there is no extra weeds, what's the chiddush? Like tzricha, here's the chiddush. Ba'asroy deloy menachshe. It's a place where they don't weed beforehand. In other words, you could weed beforehand and then harvest. So let's say the Uris says the following: I weeded beforehand, now we harvested. So even though the minig is to go ahead and plow afterwards, I took care of that already because I went ahead and weeded beforehand. Kemash malon that if the minig is to be chayrish, he can't tie into that. So it says the Gemara. One more time. It says a place where what? Where they usually do not weed. For Azal Ihu, and the worker went in Vinachish and he weeded. So he's able to say to the Balakarka, the reason why I weeded beforehand, that I did the like karivna law on the das that I shouldn't go ahead and plow afterwards. Kamash malon that if the minig is to plow afterwards, the boy you should explain beforehand why you did that, and therefore you have to go ahead and since you didn't explain why you hold beforehand, why you weeded beforehand, you have to go ahead and clean up. Okay. I call committing on Medina. I call Lasui. My rest call come to include Lasui had the ton of Rabbanim. Malkum Shinogo Lahaskir Ilanois in a place where the Chayker or the Aris would go ahead and eat from the plant, from the trees. Guys, let's say he's working in a field, it's a field of grain. And he went ahead and they made a deal. And in the field of grain, there are some trees. Now, he's not working the trees. The trees, they're going to produce their fruit regardless. Does he have a piece of the action? And that would depend on the minig. That would depend on the minig. So now, in a place where noigila hasker ilanois, that the ones that are growing in the field, agabe karka, maskirin, then you maskirin, and he's going to eat from them. Malcolm shein noigila hasker, in the place where they're not noig, ain maskirin, and he doesn't have a right to go ahead and eat from them. Says the Gemara, Malcolm shein noigila hasker, maskirin pshita. What's the chiddush? Like tzricha, the kuli alma yov betilsa. Every person, right, gives karka to the aris that he's going to give about a third. V'azal ihu v'yov b'riva, and he gave him a quarter. So ma'adatema d'amalei, right? The balakarka can say in other words, he took less, guys. So here's the following. Usually, the balakarka takes a third. He took a quarter, and it's a place where you usually eat the trees. So you might think the balakarka can say to the sharecropper, you know the reason I took less of a percentage? That's that you should not eat from the trees. Kamashmon, if it's the minig to eat from the trees in that place, that's it. So pshita, like tzricha, the kuliyama yav v'tilsa, everyone goes ahead, every balakarka, he goes ahead and gets a third of the price. And he took a quarter. So Ma'al the Tema, the Amalei, the Balkarka can say to the Oris, Hi the Batsri that I gave you what? A good deal. Is that I did lo yehivnalach. That's the Dasta what? Bilonis, that I won't give to you in the Ilonis. Kamash Malon, that the Mishnah that says that Seichin, the boy lay lefushile. You should have explained it, and since you didn't explain it, therefore you can't stop the Oris or the Chakir from eating from the trees. Malkam Shnoiga Shloila Hasker, in a place that would know not to go ahead and rent out the trees with the karka. Ein maskirin pshita, like tzricha the kuliyalman mekabla beriva. Every oris, every sharecropper accepts a quarter. This is the inverse, guys. V'azalio v'kibla betilsa. Instead of a quarter, he went ahead and he's mekabel what betilsa. So now the tema amalei that the oris can say, "Hi the tafi lecha." That what I gave you more. In other words, usually he got a quarter. Now he's getting a third. So it's not going on the Oris. It's going again on the Balkarka. So the Balkarka usually got a quarter. Now he's getting a third. And you would think that even though it's a place that normally you can't eat from the trees, since he's getting a bigger percentage, it's al manasta wat that the Oris can eat from the trees. But you got an extra. So the Oris can say to the Balkarka, excuse me, that I added on to you, that you get a more, is that I did the Yovli Bilonis, you give me for action from the trees. Kamash Malandi, boy Leila Fushil, and he should have explained this in the first place. Kishem Shecholkin Betfua, Kacholkin Betevno Bakash, we said, just like they divide the grain, they also divide what? The straw and the stubble. Amr Yosef, Bevavel, Nehigu de la Yoev, Tivno Larisa. In Babel, they never gave the teven to that was the meaning. In Babel, they did not give the teven to the workers. In other words, our Mishnah said they did. It doesn't mean that he's arguing in the Mishnah. The Mishnah says everything goes according to minig, guys. So he's saying the minig in the Mishnah was that the Oris and the Balkarka would go ahead and divide the teven and the cash. In Babel, they didn't divide the teven. He's just informing you what the minig of Babel was. My nafkamina. The Ika Inish the Yoev, if you do see a person who has a sharecropping arrangement and he does divide the Teven, Ayin Yafahuloi, the guy is a benevolent guy. You don't have to go ahead and act like him. In other words, he is the anomaly, he's a generous fellow, and it doesn't create a need for you to go ahead and divide with your sharecropper. Or if you're the Balkar, or vice versa. Amr Yosef, a few interesting agricultural ideas. Bukhra v'tivcha the arka rakafta. Rashi says they used to dig for security purposes. They would dig mounds. So the first layer was called the bukhra, like bukhar. The second layer was added on v'tafta lashon tfei, and the third one was kafta lashon rachav to ride. So these three layers, v'kani v'chizra, and the poles needed to put up a thorn fence. What was barbed wire in those days? That's in the balabayas. The chizra gufa darisa, but the thorns themselves, that was the oris. He would provide that. Klolo de milsa, kol ika balma. Anything that's the ika shmira, balma, interesting lashon. Anything that's the ika shmira, that belongs to the balabayas. The tirusi serasa, any extra shmira, the arisa, that goes on the oris. From Rabbi Yosef, mara, the hoe, uzvila is some type of shovel, the davla is a bucket, the zarnuka is some type of leather. These are all things that for irrigation. The balabayas, that's the balabayas. The risa of it be yeura, but the oris, instead of schlepping the water, he wants to make a ditch, an irrigation ditch. That's on the oris. Kishem shecholkim b'yayin kacholkim b'zmayros ubakonim konim ayaviditayu. What do you need? What do you need reeds in a vineyard? Amad v'Rav konim hamchulakim shebehen ma'amidim esakafanim. These are konim that are peeled. You take off the klipa, and they're there for the purpose of holding up the gethen. And the final din of the Mishnah was that they both provided, they both divided, and they both provided. Ushneim misapkin es hakonim. They both provide these peeled poles. Lamalei. Why do you have to tell me this din? Says the Gemara. Matam kama. Matam shneim cholkim b'konim. What's the reason that? But they both divide the konim. Mishum b'shneim misafkin es hakonim. Since they both provided in the first place, so therefore they're dividing and getting back what they rightfully gave in the first place. Okay, we'll stop over here tomorrow night. Probably 10 to 9 tomorrow night. B'ez Hashem. And now we're on target for Shavuos.